I'm Abigail, 27, and I was staring at my phone in disbelief. The email that just arrived shattered the peace of my carefully built life as a pediatric nurse in Boston. My birth parents, who abandoned me as an infant claiming they weren't ready for parenthood, were reaching out after 20 years. The same people who left me alone had gone on to have 6 other children. Now they wanted to make everything right. As my hands trembled, I wondered what right they had to disrupt the life I built without them. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever had someone from your past suddenly reappear, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I handled this unexpected reunion and the shocking truth behind why they really wanted to find me after all these years. My earliest memories aren't of loving parents or a stable home, but the confusing shuffle between foster homes in Seattle. I was abandoned at just 3 days old at Sacred Heart Hospital with nothing but a handwritten note that read, "We can't do this. We're not ready. Please find her a good home." That note became part of my file words that would haunt me for years to come. By the time I was 7, I had lived in 4 different foster homes, each one failing to become permanent for various reasons. My first placement was with an elderly couple, the Johnsons. They were kind but simply couldn't keep up with the energy of a growing toddler. I have vague memories of Mrs. Johnson's soft voice reading bedtime stories, but after 8 months they regretfully returned me to the system. The second home was overcrowded with 6 other foster children. The Patels tried their best, but there simply wasn't enough attention to go around. I remember fighting for space for food for any sign that I mattered. After 14 months there, I was moved again when the family decided to downsize their foster commitments. My third placement was the worst. Mr. Thompson had a drinking problem that wasn't apparent to social services initially. His wife seemed nice during daytime visits, but at night he would become unpredictable. We all learned to stay quiet and invisible. I was removed after 4 months when another child finally spoke up about the conditions. The fourth home seemed promising at first. The Carters lived in a nice house with a backyard swing. They had all the right answers during visits from my social worker, Ms. Dawson. But as months passed, it became clear they fostered primarily for the monthly checks. They provided the bare minimum of care while maintaining a perfect front for inspections. I spent 2 years there feeling like an unwanted houseguest. I remember my 5th birthday with painful clarity. The Carters forgot entirely. When I timidly mentioned it at dinner, Mrs. Carter seemed annoyed at the inconvenience. "We'll pick up a cupcake tomorrow," she said dismissively. I never got that cupcake. Throughout those early years, I carried a small stuffed rabbit with me from home to home. It was the only thing I had from infancy, presumably left with me at the hospital. The once white fur had turned grey, one ear was barely hanging on, but I clung to it desperately. It was the only constant in my ever-changing world. School was another challenge entirely. While other children talked about family vacations and weekend activities, I struggled with the simplest questions about my home life. "Where do you live?" became a dreaded conversation starter since my answer might be different from 1 month to the next. I developed a knack for redirecting conversations, becoming skilled at asking questions rather than answering them. When I was 7, I asked Ms. Dawson if we could try to find my real parents. She explained that they had left very little information and my file was thin. We spent an afternoon looking through what little documentation existed, but there was nothing substantial to go on, just my birth certificate with their names Jack and Laura Wilson and that painful note. I remember feeling hollow afterward, wondering what was so wrong with me that they couldn't even try. The hardest part was watching other children get adopted. I would see families come to the group home events, their eyes scanning for the perfect child. Younger children were always chosen first. Babies never stayed long. As I grew older, my chances diminished. Each time a family would visit with me, but ultimately choose another child, a little more hope died. I began to believe there must be something fundamentally unlovable about me. By the time I turned 7, I had built walls around my heart, so high that I wasn't sure anyone would ever scale them. I stopped crying when placements ended. I stopped hoping for permanence. I learned to pack my few belongings quickly and efficiently. The system had taught me that attachment was dangerous, that love was temporary, and that I was ultimately on my own. Everything changed when Thomas and Diana Morgan came to a foster fair organized by the county. I was sitting alone reading a book, not bothering to put on the cheerful display that some of the other children did when potential parents walked through. I had given up on being chosen. Thomas noticed me first. He was tall, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "What are you reading?" He asked, genuinely interested, rather than just making conversation. When I showed him my tattered copy of Charlotte's Web, he sat down beside me and told me it was one of his favorites too. Diana joined us moments later. She had warm hands and a smile that reached her eyes. Unlike other couples who seemed to be shopping for a child, the Morgans just wanted to talk. They asked questions about what I enjoyed learning in school, what my favorite food was if I liked animals. Not once did they treat me like a charity case or an item to be evaluated. After they left, I tried not to hope. I had been disappointed too many times. But a week later, Ms. Dawson told me the Morgans wanted to see me again. They began with supervised visits, then weekend stays at their modest home in a Portland suburb. The trust-building process was slow and fragile. Diana seemed to understand my hesitation, never pushing for affection I wasn't ready to give. When I spilled juice on their carpet and hid in the closet, expecting punishment, she simply helped me clean it up, assuring me accidents happen to everyone. Thomas spent hours teaching me to ride the bike they had purchased, never showing frustration when I gave up or fell. "We'll try again tomorrow," he'd say with unwavering patience. And unlike every other adult in my life, he always kept that promise. What struck me most was their consistent presence. They showed up for every school performance, parent-teacher conference, and doctor appointment. They listened when I spoke and remembered what I said. They created space for me in their lives that felt intentional and permanent. 3 months into our trial placement, they sat me down at the kitchen table. My heart sank, assuming this was the moment they would tell me it wasn't working out. Instead, Thomas asked, "Abigail, we were wondering how you would feel about us adopting you, about becoming a Morgan officially." I couldn't speak. Diana quickly added, "You don't have to answer right now. We want you to be sure. This would be forever, and we want you to want it too." The adoption process took nearly 6 months to complete, with various home studies, court appearances, and paperwork. I turned 8 the week before it was finalized. Diana and Thomas threw me my first real birthday party with balloons, friends from school, and a cake with my name spelled correctly. Becoming Abigail Morgan officially felt surreal. I had my own room with walls painted yellow because I had once mentioned liking sunflowers. There were books on the shelves, clothes in the dresser, and a window seat where I could read and watch the neighborhood. For the first time, I was encouraged to unpack completely, to put my things away, as if I would never need to gather them quickly again. That first holiday season as a family remains one of my most precious memories. We decorated a Christmas tree together, hanging ornaments that Diana said would be Abigail's ornaments for all future Christmases. Thomas took me shopping to buy a gift for Diana, treating the selection with utmost seriousness, as if my 8-year-old judgment was completely trustworthy. Yet despite their unfailing love, my past left deep scars that didn't heal overnight. I hoarded food in my bedroom, hiding granola bars and fruit snacks under my mattress, unable to trust that meals would always be provided. I had panic attacks when they were late picking me up from school, convinced they had decided to abandon me. Physical affection remained difficult, as I would stiffen when hugged, the intimacy too overwhelming. The Morgans never gave up. They arranged for me to see Dr. Sarah Jenkins, a therapist specializing in foster and adopted children. In those sessions, I slowly began to process the abandonment and instability of my early years. Dr. Jenkins used art therapy, having me draw my feelings when words failed. Those crayon scribbles of rage and fear gradually gave way to more hopeful images. A year after moving in with the Morgans, I had a nightmare about being taken away. I woke up sobbing, and for the first time I called out, "Mom!" Diana came running, and as she held me, I realized I had finally allowed myself to believe this family could be permanent. When I was 10, Diana found my original birth certificate while organizing some paperwork. She sat me down and gently asked if I wanted to know anything about my birth parents. "We will always be your parents," she assured me. "But it's okay to be curious about where you came from." I thought about it for several days before deciding. "You're my real parents," I told them over dinner. "I don't need to know about people who didn't want me." Diana and Thomas exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret, but they respected my decision. The subject was dropped, though I knew they would revisit it if I ever changed my mind. Looking back, I realized how fortunate I was to find the Morgans when I did. They gave me more than a home, they gave me a foundation. They taught me that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who chooses to love you when they have every option not to. As I moved into my teenage years, the secure foundation the Morgans provided allowed me to flourish in many ways, but questions about my origins continued to surface. I threw myself into academics, finding that achievement provided a sense of validation that helped quiet the lingering whispers of unworthiness. My straight A record became a shield against the uncertainty of my identity, proof that I was worthy of space in the world. During my sophomore year of high school, I discovered an interest in healthcare after joining a hospital volunteer program. Something about the environment resonated with me, perhaps because hospitals represented both the place of my abandonment and the possibilities of healing. I started in the gift shop, but soon gravitated toward the pediatric floor, where I read stories to children confined to beds and separated from normal teenage experiences. While I appeared well-adjusted on the surface, internal questions about my biological origins grew more persistent. When looking in the mirror, I wondered whose eyes I had, whose smile, whose temperament. During health class discussions about genetic conditions, I realized I knew nothing about my medical history. Was I predisposed to heart disease, cancer? These weren't just idle curiosities, but gaps in critical knowledge. The identity questions became unavoidable during a heritage project in my junior year. The assignment required students to create a family tree and discuss their cultural background. I sat frozen as classmates excitedly talked about their Irish grandparents or Italian great-grandmothers. The Morgans were of Scottish descent, but that wasn't my blood heritage. For the first time in years, I felt painfully different from my adoptive parents, despite their love. After weeks of internal struggle, I finally approached them on a Sunday afternoon. We were in the garden, Diana pruning roses, while Thomas and I weeded around the vegetables. My voice shook as I brought up the subject we hadn't discussed in 6 years. "I think I want to try to find my birth parents," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on the soil. The silence that followed seemed eternal. When I finally looked up, I saw concern in their eyes, but not the hurt or rejection I had feared. Thomas set down his garden tools. "What brought this on, Abby?" I explained about the Heritage Project. The medical history questions the feeling of having a puzzle inside me with crucial pieces missing. "It's not that you aren't enough," I assured them, tears threatening. "You're my real parents. I just need to know." Diana reached for my soil-covered hand with her gardening glove. "We understand, sweetheart. We've always known this day might come. Whatever you discover, it won't change who you are to us." Their support was unwavering, though I could sense their concern that reopening this door might bring pain. We contacted an adoption search specialist recommended by Dr. Jenkins. The process was slower and more complicated than I had imagined, yielding only fragments of information. My birth parents were named Jack and Laura Wilson. They had been 19 and 20 when I was born. Records showed they had moved from Seattle shortly after my birth, leaving few traces behind. The specialist suggested social media might provide more current information, which led to a discovery that would shake my carefully reconstructed world. A simple search revealed Laura Wilson's profile, which wasn't set to private. The profile picture showed a smiling woman surrounded by children, a man's arm around her shoulder. As I scrolled through publicly visible photos, the reality hit me like a physical blow. The Wilsons hadn't remained childless after giving me up. They had gone on to have multiple children, 6 of them ranging from teenage years to elementary age. There they were in family vacation photos, school celebration, pictures, holiday gatherings, the picture of a complete and happy family. The caption spoke of pride in their oldest, who was clearly younger than me, of family traditions that had existed for years, of inside jokes and shared milestones. There was no mention of another child, no acknowledgement of my existence. I had been erased. I remember staring at those images, unable to process what I was seeing. They hadn't been not ready for parenthood in any absolute sense. They just hadn't been ready for me. I was the practice baby, the one they discarded before creating their real family. The emotional breakdown that followed was unlike anything I had experienced since early childhood. Diana found me curled on my bedroom floor, surrounded by printed photos of the Wilson family, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. Through broken sentences, I tried to explain what I had discovered. They had 6 kids, I kept repeating. 6 kids after they threw me away. The Morgans surrounded me with love in the aftermath of this devastating revelation. They held space for my anger, my grief, and my questions, without trying to minimize the pain or offer platitudes. Thomas sat with me late into the night, just being present. Diana arranged for intensive sessions with Dr. Jenkins to help me process this new layer of abandonment. In therapy, I raged against the unfairness. What made those children capable and not me, I demanded. Dr. Ray. Jenkins helped me understand that the decision likely had nothing to do with me as an individual baby, but with my birth parents' circumstances and maturity at that time. Their choice reflects on them, not on your worthiness, she reminded me repeatedly. After months of emotional turbulence, I made the difficult decision to halt the search and focus on my future. The glimpse I had gotten into the Wilsons' life had answered some questions, but opened wounds I wasn't prepared to explore further. I channeled my energy into college applications, determined to build a life defined by my choices rather than their rejection. The Morgans supported this decision as they had supported the search itself. When I graduated as valedictorian, no parents could have been more proud. Thomas embarrassed me thoroughly by cheering too loudly when my name was called, and Diana took enough photos to fill multiple albums. Looking out at them from the podium during my speech, I realized that biology was just one small aspect of family. The people who chose me, who stayed through the hard parts, who celebrated my victories and held me through defeats, they were my true family, regardless of DNA. I left Portland to attend the University of Washington, determined to reinvent myself beyond the shadow of abandonment. College offered the perfect opportunity to define who Abigail Morgan would become, separate from both my early trauma and the protective bubble of my adoptive parents. My nursing major was a deliberate choice, combining my interest in healthcare with a desire to provide the compassionate care I had once needed. Campus life introduced me to different kinds of relationships. My roommate Zoe became my first real best friend, someone who knew me as I was now rather than as the damaged foster child. She was studying psychology and had an uncanny ability to read people, though I kept certain parts of my history private at first. Our late-night conversations about everything from philosophy to favorite ice cream flavors created a comfortable intimacy I hadn't experienced with peers before. In my second year, I met Marcus in anatomy lab. We were study partners by necessity, then friends by choice. His easygoing nature and genuine interest in others made him popular across campus, and I was surprised when he seemed to prefer my company to the many social options available to him. He never pushed for more than friendship, sensitive to my carefully maintained boundaries around dating. As my coursework progressed, I gravitated toward pediatric specialization. Working with children connected to something fundamental in me, perhaps the part that still remembered what it felt like to be small and vulnerable in an adult world. During clinical rotations, I found I had a natural ability to comfort frightened children, to explain procedures in ways they could understand, to be the steady presence they needed during difficult moments. It was during a pediatric rotation at Seattle Children's Hospital that I met Michael, a third-year medical student with kind eyes and a terrible sense of humor. He made the children laugh with his silly jokes and magic tricks, even when they were facing serious illnesses. I noticed him long before he noticed me, admiring his easy way with patients and the respect he showed the nursing staff, unlike some medical students who seem to view nurses as subordinates. Our first conversation happened over a sleeping patient, a 7-year-old girl recovering from appendix surgery. We spoke in whispers about her care plan, and something in his attentiveness made me feel truly seen. When he asked if I wanted to grab coffee after our shifts, I surprised myself by saying yes. That coffee turned into dinner the following week, and soon we were seeing each other regularly. Michael was patient with my hesitancy, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. When I would pull back emotionally, he gave me space without disappearing. It was a new experience to be with someone who seemed to instinctively understand that trust was something I needed to build slowly. After graduation, I accepted a position at Boston Children's Hospital, partly for the exceptional program and partly for the chance to start fresh in a new city. I was terrified Michael would take this as a sign I was running from our relationship, which had grown serious over the previous year. Instead, he researched residency programs in Boston and secured a pediatric residency at Massachusetts General Hospital. "I want to be where you are," he said simply, "if you'll have me." We found a small apartment equidistant between our hospitals, merging our lives with a tentative optimism that sometimes scared me. There were moments when domestic happiness felt like a trap, when I would find myself waiting for him to leave, as everyone eventually did. These fears culminated when, after 2 years in Boston, Michael proposed during a weekend trip to Cape Cod. The panic that gripped me in that moment had nothing to do with Michael and everything to do with the abandoned child still living inside me. I saw the hurt in his eyes as I froze instead of responding, and it shook me into awareness of how my past was threatening my future. "I need some time," I whispered, and to his eternal credit, he nodded and said, "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That moment led me back to therapy this time, with Dr. Lewis, who specialized in adult attachment disorders. The sessions were difficult, requiring me to revisit aspects of my early abandonment I thought I had resolved. I realized I had built my independence as a defense against potential rejection, keeping parts of myself walled off, even from Michael. After 3 months of intensive work, I felt ready to have an honest conversation with him about my fears. We sat on our small balcony overlooking the city lights, and I told him everything, beginning with the hospital abandonment, through the foster homes, to the devastating discovery about my birth parents and their new family. I'm afraid of believing in forever, I admitted. Every time I've trusted someone to stay, they've left except the Morgans. Michael listened without interrupting, his hand steady in mine. When I finished, he said, I can't promise we won't face hard times or that I'll never disappoint you, but I can promise I won't walk away. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. I don't want perfect Abby. I want real, and that includes all your scars and fears. That night, I accepted his proposal, choosing to believe in the possibility of lasting love despite the risk. The simple silver ring he offered felt like a statement of faith in what we could build together. Our wedding plans were modest but meaningful. The Morgans flew to Boston regularly to help with arrangements, Diana and I bonding over flower selections and menu tastings. Thomas took his role as father of the bride with profound seriousness, practicing his walk down the aisle in our apartment until we collapsed in laughter. On our wedding day, with Thomas walking me down the aisle and Diana giving a speech that left no dry eyes in the room, I felt a sense of belonging that transcended biology. When I became Abigail Peters, I carried the Morgan name in my heart as the family that had chosen me when I most needed to be chosen. Michael and I built our life in Boston, focused on our careers, helping children, and creating a home together. I began volunteering with foster children in the hospital system, offering support to kids facing medical procedures without consistent parental presence. The work felt like coming full circle, using my own experience to provide the understanding I had once needed. For the first time in my life, I felt truly settled. My past would always be part of me, but it no longer defined me. I had created an identity as a healer, a wife, a daughter to parents who chose me, a friend to those who saw my worth. I had made peace with the pieces of my history I couldn't change. And then the email arrived from Laura Wilson, shattering the equilibrium I had worked so hard to achieve. The email notification chimed while I was preparing dinner in our apartment, Michael still at the hospital finishing his shift. I almost ignored it, focused on chopping vegetables for stir-fry, but something compelled me to check my phone. The sender name stopped my breath. Laura Wilson, subject line. After all these years hoping to reconnect. My hands trembled so badly I had to set the phone down on the counter before I could open the message. When I finally gathered the courage to read it, the words seemed to blur and rearrange themselves. Dear Abigail, I'm not sure if this is still your email, but we hope it reaches you. This is Laura Wilson, your birth mother. Jack and I have been searching for you for some time now. We know this must come as a shock after so many years. We want to apologize for the decisions we made when you were born. We were young and afraid, not ready for the responsibility of parenthood. It's the greatest regret of our lives that we didn't find a better solution than leaving you as we did. Over the years, we've built a family and have 6 wonderful children who would love to meet their big sister. We've told them about you, and they're eager to welcome you into the family. We understand if you're angry or want nothing to do with us, but we're hoping for a chance to make things right, to explain in person, and perhaps to be part of your life going forward. Attached are some family photos so you can see the siblings who have always had a place saved for you in our hearts. With hope and regret, Laura and Jack Wilson. Attached were several photos of family portrait, with 6 children ranging from college age to elementary school, a Christmas gathering, a backyard barbecue. They looked happy, comfortable, like a complete family. There was no empty space indicating a missing member, no sign that anyone had been waiting for me. The panic attack hit without warning. My chest constricted, breathing became impossible, and the room spun around me. I slid down against the kitchen cabinets, gasping for air that wouldn't come. That's how Michael found me, an hour later, curled on the kitchen floor with dinner preparations. Abandoned my phone, still displaying the email. Abby, what happened? He dropped to his knees beside me, medical training kicking in as he checked my pulse and breathing. They contacted me. I managed between shallow breaths. My birth parents. Michael read the email quickly, his expression darkening. He helped me to the couch, bringing water and sitting beside me until the worst of the anxiety passed. As my breathing steadied, the emotions came in waves: rage, curiosity, bitterness, fear, and a small, unwelcome spark of hope that I hated myself for feeling. How dare they? I whispered, finally finding words for the turmoil inside. After 20 years, they think they can just email and everything will be fine. They had 6 other children, Michael, 6, after throwing me away like garbage. You don't have to respond, Michael said gently. You don't owe them anything. But we both knew I would have to make a decision, and ignoring the message wouldn't make it disappear. That night, I called the Morgans, needing their guidance more than ever. They listened as I read the email aloud, the pain in my voice echoing across the phone lines. What should I do? I asked, feeling like a child again. Diana's voice was steady, though I could hear the protective anger underneath. Whatever you decide, we support you, Abby, but protect your heart. These people have hurt you once before. The next day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Lewis, bringing a printed copy of the email. We spent the hour unpacking all the conflicting emotions it had triggered. They live in Chicago, I noted, having researched the email address. That's only a 2-hour flight from here. Is meeting them something you're considering? Dr. Lewis asked neutrally. I don't know. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell. Part of me is curious about these siblings who apparently know about me. And part of me wants answers to questions I've had my whole life. In the days that followed, I conducted what Michael called reconnaissance, searching for information about the Wilson family online. Jack ran a successful construction company, Evident, from the business website, showing commercial projects across the Midwest. Laura maintained a mommy blog titled The Wilson Bunch, chronicling their family life with professional quality photos and heartwarming anecdotes. The blog was the most difficult to read. Laura presented herself as the ultimate mother, sharing wisdom about raising children, celebrating family traditions, posting recipes for Sunday dinners. There were detailed birthday celebrations for each child, first day of school, photos, sports victories, dance recitals, all documented with loving attention. Nowhere in the hundreds of posts was there any mention of a first child given up before this picture-perfect family began. After a week of sleepless nights, I drafted a cautious response, deleted it, rewrote it, and repeated the process dozens of times. Michael offered to help, but understood when I said this was something I needed to formulate myself. Finally, I sent a brief reply. I received your email and need more information before considering a meeting. Why are you reaching out now after 20 years? What exactly are you hoping will happen? I have built a life without you, and I need to understand your motivations before deciding whether to allow you into it. Abigail Morgan Peters. Their response came within hours, a lengthy email explaining their journey. Dear Abigail, thank you for responding. We understand your caution and have so much to explain. When you were born, we were practically children ourselves. Jack was working minimum wage jobs while trying to finish technical school. I had dropped out of community college when I got pregnant. Our parents were furious and refused to help. We were living in a studio apartment we could barely afford, fighting constantly from stress. When we left you at the hospital, we convinced ourselves it was the loving choice that you would be adopted by a family better equipped to care for you. We moved to Chicago to start fresh, carrying the weight of our decision with us. Jack finished his education and slowly built his business. We got married properly, bought a small house, and only then felt ready to try again. Over the years, as our family grew and circumstances improved, the guilt and shame over how we handled your birth grew too. We never forgot you or stopped wondering about you. Recently, we've been attending a church that emphasizes making amends for past wrongs. This spiritual awakening led us to finally search for you to try to make right what we did wrong. We don't expect forgiveness or for you to welcome us with open arms. We just want a chance to see you, to apologize in person, to answer any questions you might have. Your siblings know about you and have always wished they could meet their older sister. If you're willing, we would come to Boston meet, wherever you're comfortable, with anyone you want present. This would be entirely on your terms. With hope, Laura and Jack. As I read their explanation, my anger intensified rather than diminished. Their narrative centered entirely around their experience, their journey, their guilt. Even now, they seemed more concerned with alleviating their own conscience than considering the lifetime of abandonment issues I had navigated as a result of their loving choice. After several more exchanges over the following weeks, each increasingly tense, as I challenged their self-serving perspective, I made the decision to meet them, but on my terms. I would not travel to them, entering their territory as a supplicant. They would come to Boston. Michael would be present. We would meet in a public place where I could leave if necessary. They agreed immediately to all conditions, seeming almost pathetically grateful for any opportunity I offered. We arranged to meet at a restaurant in a hotel near the airport neutral ground that wouldn't taint any of my familiar places with their presence. The day of the meeting arrived with dreamlike unreality. Michael and I arrived early, securing a corner table with a clear path to the exit. I had dressed carefully, wanting to project confidence and success, rather than the vulnerability clawing at my insides. When Jack and Laura Wilson walked into the restaurant, I recognized them instantly from their photos. Though reality added details the images hadn't captured, Jack was taller than I expected, with silver at his temples, and the confident stride of a man accustomed to commanding respect. Laura was thin, carefully maintained, with expertly applied makeup and designer clothes that spoke of comfortable means. They hesitated at the entrance, scanning the room until Laura's eyes landed on me, widening with recognition. Something twisted in my chest as they approached. For the first time, I was seeing the source of my own features, the genetic blueprint I had wondered about for years. Jack had my same high forehead and straight nose. Laura's eyes were a match for my own unusual grey-blue. It was disorienting to see pieces of myself in these strangers. "Abigail," Laura breathed as they reached the table. She half raised her arms as if to embrace me, then thought better of it when she saw my rigid posture. "Thank you for agreeing to meet us." Michael stood protectively by my side, introducing himself with professional courtesy that made it clear he was there as my support system. We all sat in awkward silence, falling as reality collided with whatever scenario they had imagined. Jack cleared his throat. You've grown into such a beautiful woman. Did you expect otherwise?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Laura jumped in. "No, of course not. It's just overwhelming to finally see you. The last time we saw you, you were just 3 days old. When you left me with nothing but a note," I stated flatly. They exchanged glances and Laura nodded. "We know there's no excuse for what we did. We were scared and made a terrible choice." What followed was clearly a rehearsed apology, words they had practiced that rang hollow in the actual moment. Laura's tears seemed more about her own guilt than my pain. Jack explained again how they weren't ready, but later grew up and created a stable home. They spoke about their other children, my siblings, who apparently had been told sanitized versions of my existence. The conversation felt performative until Jack mentioned how their oldest biological son had recently graduated high school with honors. "He reminds me of you sometimes," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, from what we can tell from your accomplishments." "You don't know me," I pointed out. "You know facts you found online. Those aren't the same thing. We'd like to know you," Laura insisted. "The real you." "Why now?" I asked directly. "After 20 years, what changed? And don't tell me about your spiritual awakening. There's something specific that triggered this search, and I want the truth." They exchanged another look, a wordless communication that confirmed my suspicion. Jack sighed heavily. "We do want to know you," he began. "That's absolutely true. But yes, there is something specific that accelerated our search." Laura reached for her purse, removing a folder. "Our oldest son, Justin, he's 19. He was diagnosed with focal segmental glomerulosclerosis last year. It's a kidney condition that's progressively getting worse. My medical training kicked in immediately. FSGS was serious, often leading to kidney failure, requiring transplant." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said cautiously. "That's a difficult diagnosis." "He's been declining faster than expected," Jack continued. "He's on dialysis now, but he needs a transplant. Everyone in the family has been tested, but none of us are compatible matches." The truth clicked into place with sickening clarity. "So you found me through medical records, hoping I might be a compatible donor." Laura reached across the table, stopping short of touching my hand when Michael shifted protectively. "We would have searched for you eventually, Abigail. We've carried the guilt for years. But yes, Justin's condition made it more urgent." "Let me understand this correctly," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You abandoned me as an infant, went on to have 6 more children, lived your perfect family life, without a thought for what happened to me, and now you've tracked me down because you need my kidney." "That's not fair," Jack protested. "We did think about you, all the time. Just not enough to look for me until you needed something from me," I countered. "We made mistakes," Laura said, tears streaming now. "Terrible mistakes. But Justin is innocent in all this. He's your brother." "Half-brother," I corrected. "A stranger with whom I share some DNA. I don't know him. I don't know any of you." "If you would just meet him," Jack pressed, "so meet all your siblings. They're good kids who've wanted to know their big sister." Something in his phrasing triggered a response I couldn't control. "Big sister, is that how you think of me? Because from where I'm sitting, I wasn't considered part of this family at all." I was the practice run, the mistake you discarded before starting your real family. Jack's face flushed. That's not true. We were just kids ourselves. We didn't know what we were doing with our first. He trailed off, realizing too late the implication of his words. Our first. The experiment. The one that didn't count. In that moment, everything crystallized. These people hadn't come to make amends or build a relationship. They had come because they needed something from me, and they were willing to manipulate my emotions and dangle the promise of family to get it. I stood abruptly. I think we're done here. Abigail, please, Laura begged. At least consider being tested. You're a nurse, you help children. Justin is just a boy who needs help. I help children every day, I said coldly. Children who are strangers to me, just like your son. If you want me to consider donation, you can contact the hospital's transplant coordinator, like any other patient's family. But don't pretend this is about reconnecting with the daughter you threw away. As I walked toward the exit, Michael at my side, I heard Laura call after me. Will you at least get tested? Please, he doesn't have much time. Michael turned back briefly. If you're genuinely interested in Abigail as a person, not just as a potential organ donor, you might want to reconsider your approach. She deserved better from you 20 years ago, and she deserves better now. We left them sitting there, Laura openly crying, Jack staring after us with a mixture of anger and desperation. As the hotel doors closed behind us, the weight of 20 years of abandonment, followed by this final exploitation, crashed over me. I made it to the parking garage before collapsing into Michael's arms, sobs racking my body. The emotional aftermath of meeting the Wilsons left me raw and disoriented. Michael had to guide me through the hotel lobby, my vision blurred with tears, my body feeling disconnected from reality. Back home, I curled into a ball on our bed, unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. They only wanted me for parts, I whispered when Michael brought me tea hours later. The absurdity of the situation might have been laughable if it hadn't been so deeply painful. After a lifetime of wondering why I wasn't enough for them to keep, I had discovered I was only valuable now for what I could physically provide. The Morgans flew to Boston the next morning after hearing what had happened. They arrived at our apartment with fierce protectiveness, Diana hugging me tightly, while Thomas paced the living room, uncharacteristic anger evident in his normally gentle demeanor. The audacity, he kept saying, to approach you this way after what they did. Their presence anchored me as I worked through the turbulent emotions. Diana stayed for a week cooking comfort foods from my childhood and sitting with me during sleepless nights. Thomas used his background in business law to research whether the Wilsons could make any legal claims, reassuring us they had no standing to demand anything from me. The most difficult aspect was the ethical dilemma regarding Justin's condition. As a pediatric nurse, I had dedicated my life to helping children. The fact that this particular young man shared my DNA shouldn't matter yet. It complicated everything. If he had simply been a patient at my hospital, I would have considered donation without question. But the manipulative way the Wilsons had approached the situation tainted the decision. I researched FSGS, extensively consulting with nephrology colleagues about Justin's prognosis. Without knowing his specific medical details, they could only speak generally, but confirmed that kidney transplant offered the best long-term outlook for severe cases. Michael supported me unconditionally, but was careful not to influence my decision. This has to be entirely your choice, he said. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. After 3 weeks of intensive therapy sessions, conversations with the Morgans, and deep personal reflection, I came to a decision that honored both my medical ethics and my need for emotional boundaries. I contacted a transplant attorney who helped me establish clear legal parameters. Through this intermediary, I informed the Wilsons that I would undergo compatibility testing, but with strict conditions, all communication would go through medical professionals or legal representatives, not direct contact. There would be no expectation of ongoing relationship during or after the process, and they must acknowledge in writing the circumstances of my abandonment without justification or excuse. The Wilsons readily agreed to all terms, their desperation for help overriding any objection to my boundaries. I underwent the initial testing, maintaining emotional detachment by focusing on the medical aspects rather than the personal connection. When the results came back showing I was indeed a compatible donor, I faced the final decision. After consultation with the transplant team, I discovered an option that allowed me to maintain my ethical standards while protecting my emotional well-being, a paired exchange program. These programs allow incompatible donor-recipient pairs to be matched with other incompatible pairs. By donating my kidney to a stranger in the program, Justin would receive a compatible kidney from another donor in the exchange. This way, I could honor my medical oath to help those in need while maintaining distance from the Wilsons. I would be helping not just Justin, but another patient as well, and the Wilsons need never know of my specific contribution to the exchange. It was a solution that felt right medically and emotionally. The recovery from surgery was physically challenging, but emotionally liberating. Michael took time off to care for me, and the Morgans came to help during my convalescence. As my body healed, I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I had been carrying, the final resolution of a wound that had been open since infancy. Before returning to work, I wrote a final letter to the Wilsons. I have contributed to the medical solution for Justin's condition in a way that aligns with my professional ethics and personal boundaries. I wish him full recovery and health. However, I want to be clear that this medical intervention does not create a family relationship. You made your choice 20 years ago, and I have built my life accordingly. The family I have chosen, who chose me in return, provides everything I need. I forgive you for abandoning me, not for your benefit, but for my own peace. I release the anger and hurt that has been part of my identity for too long. But forgiveness does not mean invitation into my life. I hope Justin recovers fully and that your family finds happiness. My own family and future await me now. Abigail Morgan Peters. I had no expectation of response and wanted none. The chapter was closed as far as I was concerned. Life returned to a new normal, my work at the hospital taking on deeper meaning after my own experience as a patient. 6 months later, however, an unexpected message appeared on my professional social media account. It was from a teenage girl named Sophia Wilson, identifying herself as my youngest half-sister. Unlike her parents' approach, her message was respectful and tentative. I found your profile through a medical article you were mentioned in. I understand why you don't want contact with my parents after everything. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did for Justin. He's doing well now. If you ever want to know anything about this side of your biology or medical history, I'd be happy to share information. No pressure for anything more. I respect your boundaries completely. After careful consideration, I responded with basic medical history information that might be relevant to her and the other siblings, maintaining professional distance while acknowledging our biological connection. This led to occasional arm's-length exchanges of medical updates when relevant. 2 of the other siblings eventually reached out in similar fashion, each respecting the boundaries I had established. These limited interactions helped me separate the innocent siblings from the parents' actions, allowing me to provide potentially valuable medical information without emotional entanglement. The Wilsons themselves made one final attempt at contact, sending a gift basket to my workplace after Justin's successful recovery. I donated it to the hospital break room and reinforced through my attorney that my boundaries remained firm. They have not contacted me directly since. Through this challenging journey, my relationship with the Morgans deepened even further. Our shared experience of navigating this complex situation strengthened our bond in ways I hadn't thought possible. They had stood by me through every stage of my life, proving again that true family is defined by consistent love and support, not genetic connection. Michael and I began discussing adoption ourselves, both drawn to the idea of providing a home for a child who needed one, just as the Morgans had done for me. We started the lengthy process, attending information sessions and completing home studies, ready to continue the legacy of chosen family that had saved me. Looking back on the long journey from abandoned infant to confident adult, capable of making difficult ethical choices, I realized that the story of my life isn't defined by those who left, but by those who stayed. My worth was never determined by my biological parents' inability to recognize it, but by my own determination to create meaning from painful beginnings. What the Wilsons never understood was that family isn't an obligation of blood, but a privilege, earned through consistent presence, unwavering support, and genuine love. The Morgans taught me that. Michael reinforces it daily, and someday I will teach it to a child who needs to hear it as desperately as I once did. Have you ever had someone from your past suddenly reappear in your life? What would you have done in my situation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about finding strength through life's challenges. And if you know someone who might be struggling with family issues or questions about their own worth, please share this video with them. Remember, family isn't always about who shares your DNA, but about who shows up for you when it matters most. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it brings some comfort to anyone feeling unwanted or abandoned. You are enough just as you are.